Hello again. A central theme of the concept of multiculturalism is, of course, that all cultures are equally valuable, and there is no reason to think that one is of more intrinsic value or importance than another. Who is to say that the language and culture of the Eskimos is not at least as worthy as that of Renaissance Italy or modern England? We should exercise cultural sensitivity and celebrate Diwali as well as Easter, Ramadan and Christmas. In this way, society will become a fascinating mosaic of different cultures and traditions. This at least is the theory behind multiculturalism. But of course, this enchanting idea has really proved to be no more than a Trojan horse. Because once all those other cultures, that of the Pakistanis and Jamaicans, and Nigerians and Romanians, Hindus, Buddhists and Muslims were here, and we were busy respecting them and being broad-minded, it dawned on some of us that this was all a feint, and that the actual result was the wholesale destruction of our own culture. Take English country dancing and English folk songs. English country dancing is actually a part of our culture. Traditional African drumming is often taught in primary schools these days as a means of being anti-colonial and respecting other people's culture. And we all know that folk dances from other countries, China for instance, are to be treated with reverence and respected as being just as good as English folk dancing. That's all well and good, of course, but when it comes to English folk dancing, this must not be celebrated proudly at all, but rather treated as something which needs to be altered to make it more welcoming and inclusive to others. The thumbnail to this video shows the picture to be found on the home page of the website for the English Folk Dance and Song Society at Cecil Sharp House. This is a famous organisation dedicated to preserving and celebrating this aspect of purely English culture. I dare say older viewers will remember doing English country dancing when they were at school and even learning English folk songs. A Chinese folk dance and song association would of course be an admirable enterprise, and nobody would object to seeing a lot of Chinese people engaging in traditional dances. The same would happen if there were a society of, say, Ghanaian folk dancing or Indian dance. English folk dancing, though, sounds a little bit too exclusive. The photograph in the thumbnail, and I give a link to the website of the English Folk Dance and Song Society website so you can check it for yourself, shows only black people. In short, this is not a black person who wishes to engage in traditional English folk dancing, but a group of black people who have formed a separate folk dancing group, creating their own folk dances with a black flavour. This is appropriation. Can anybody really imagine an African drumming group whose website showed a picture of only white people doing African drumming? That would be grotesque, right? Well, so is this. The people running the English Folk Dance and Song Society are embarrassed about the idea of celebrating English culture and have decided that there is something racist about it, so they must instead show black people who have devised a pastiche of English folk dancing. Let me give another instance of where our well-meaning ideas about respecting other people's cultures have led us. There was a time when public institutions like hospitals and some schools had chapels where people could pray or meditate. They certainly didn't refuse admission to anybody. Although there were Christian places of worship, all were welcome there. But when it was decided that English society must be more multicultural and inclusive, people began to feel awkward about having a place of worship dedicated to the national religion of England. After all, other religions might be just as true as Christianity. So, to avoid appearing exclusive, crosses were removed from chapels and they became non-denominational places of worship. Then they were renamed as prayer rooms, multi-faith rooms, and various other things. Of course, having stripped out the Christian imagery to show respect for other faiths, it didn't take long before those other faiths began to demand that their own religious symbols should be placed in the multi-faith spaces and prayer rooms. Chairs were removed and replaced with prayer mats, and perhaps a sign indicating the direction of Mecca. Some started putting racks outside so that those entering could remove their shoes as though they were going into a mosque. The ultimate transformation has occurred in multi-faith prayer rooms which I have visited at Birmingham New Street railway station and also at the New City College campus in Redbridge up by Littleheath. Both these places now have separate rooms for men and women and also taps for ritual washing before prayer. This is what happens if you are too welcoming and respectful of other cultures, you see. You end up with your own culture being obliterated and trampled underfoot. There is an English culture, although it's fast vanishing, and precisely because we have been so non-judgmental and welcoming of other cultures. Queuing patiently used to be a peculiarly English thing that other nations envied and remarked upon. Try queuing for a bus these days and see how fast a bunch of foreigners will push in front of you. That's another part of our culture gone. The English reserve, behaving quietly in the street, keeping your voice down. Another bit of our culture which has vanished. The stiff upper lip, English courtesy, English music, the English countryside. At every touch and turn, our culture is under threat, and even when there is some aspect of it we have managed to preserve, such as Sunday walks in the countryside, it is suggested that this is racist and unwelcoming to other cultures. English culture has been trashed, and within a generation will have vanished entirely. A distinctive culture built up slowly over the course of 1,000 years or so, gone for good. Such is the nature of multiculturalism. And this is why I described it as a Trojan horse. It seemed a perfectly innocuous thing to do to respect other people's cultures, but the result has been destruction of our own.